Welcome back to the Maxon booth here at NAB East in New York, live on the 3D Motion Show. I am Matthias Omatola, your longtime host. We are at that one moment that everybody's sad and happy for. It's the last presentation of the show of the day, but that's okay because we have an amazing one coming up. We have Chris Vranos also, who will be let's see, I don't want to say supported, it'd be more like harassed by Gavin Shapiro at some point as well. So take it from here, Chris. Thanks so much.
All right. So normally someone would introduce themselves during the presentation, but everything that I'm going to be showing, I'm going to be showing the technique right after. So no reel, we're just going to get right into it. The presentation is your first day in Cinema 4D. This is a mobile game that I made a couple years ago. The character was made in Cinema 4D, the staging, and that's what we're going to look at first. You can play this if you go to my website, chrisvranos.com. For anyone who thinks that will enhance the presentation experience, you just have to go to the game tab and then move over. So this guy, made in Cinema 4D. Hey. All right. And we're not going to get caught in the game too much, but this is it. So there's an idle animation, a jump, a landing animation. Anyway. So let's get right into modeling this character. The first thing is, if we take a look at this character, I have this switch here between high poly and low poly. And when you make a game, you don't necessarily know what your deployment target is and what the requirements are going to be. So in Cinema 4D, there are generator objects, which are really, really helpful. They use parameters to create the geometry as opposed to straight to polygons. So I'm going to go to, let's go to line shading. And we're going to look at these generator objects in just a second, but you can see the flexibility here. This is really helpful when you don't know what your deployment target is going to be. I'm going to remember to close most of these as I go so I don't get cluttered. I only have like 50 scenes, guys. This is going to be fast. For modeling this presentation is intended for people who have never used Cinema 4D before. These are going to show the technique. So creating a spline and then lathing. That's for the feet and the legs. A sphere, a cylinder with a bulge. Another lathe, some extrudes, that's when you make a circle and then go to another circle. So all very, very simple techniques that we're going to go over that you could conceivably do your first day in Cinema 4D. And we'll just kind of move ahead there. There's the character. So let's do this. I don't need to show you guys how to make a sphere. That is something you can figure out on your own. But let's look at the cylinder. So again, a generator object has these different parameters that you can change. This one has the radius and the height. And to get this bend, I think that a lot of people need to try to remember that deformers are fantastic for modeling because they're also procedural and you can change them. So I have this bulge and I'm going to fit it to the parent. And there's this strength control here, right? Very easy way to model and keep things flexible. This also comes into play in the animation later. And again, so maybe this edge isn't looking so good right now. Just another place where generators are awesome because you can just bring up the height segments as you go and make that smooth. Moving on to a lathe. So that's what I used for the foot and for the leg right there. So for again, for those of you who aren't familiar with Cinema 4D, you have your spline tool, which lets you draw lines, basically. So I'm drawing the foot. Might as well draw the leg while I'm in there. And then I'm going to select it and go to lathe, holding down Option. Whenever you have a spline underneath one of these generator objects, it's going to build off of the spline. And this also has generator parameters as well. So that's how I built the legs and the feet. I don't think I need to show you the sphere. Let's take a look at an extrude. So an extrude is just going to take a spline object and it's going to move it out based on the offset here. That's what I used for the jetpack. And there's also this option for caps for rounding. Again, very powerful tools. Give you a lot of flexibility without baking it to polygons. Actually, I'm going to keep this circle. Then there's a loft. This is how I made the head. I'm going to control, click, and drag to duplicate this. And what the loft does is it's going to extend from one of these spline objects to the next. And then to make the head, I just bent this one up like that, bend this one down like that. You can kind of see that right there. And the last one was a sweep. So go to spline, and to draw the antenna, we'll put that inside of a sweep. And then you need to create something to move along the path. So I'll take this circle, put it in there. It's going to look crazy until I shrink this way down. All right. That's everything you need to know to model that character. There's nothing more complex than that. I don't know where the materials window is, but I should get that up. Materials manager or editor? Okay, great. So to create a material and to give color to these, you just go to materials, new standard material. Just change the color, so whatever this color is here, and just drag it onto the mesh. Very easy. Again, first day in Cinema 4D, I wasn't kidding. You can model that easily. Now we're going to look at rigging to actually get this character animated. When you rig, you use something called joints. I'm going to go into character joint tool. And the way that you place a joint is you try to find the central point where something would rotate around. So right here in the leg like this, I'm just control clicking, and then down to the ankle, and then down to the foot. And then everything is going to be attached to this and move. This is a little bit of a slow process, so I just kind of animated where I went from the root from there, showing the placement of each of these joints. Simple on the legs, and then one on the neck, one on the head, and then one for the ears, eyes, pupils, and antennas, so those can move around. Let's go to constraints. So to actually get these attached to the joints, you have to use a constraint. If I just start moving this, there's no connection. Trying to make it convenient for you and easier for me to remember here. To attach something, you would select the geometry, select the ankle, control clicking, go to character, constraints, add parent constraint. And now when we move this joint, that is attached. So I'm just going to go up the leg. Hopefully it won't take too long. Character, constraint, add parent constraint. This is the kind of thing where when I was doing this a lot, I would definitely have hotkeys. Constraint. All right, two more. Parent constraint. All right, and now all of these are attached. So moving like this. So now I want to talk about what forward kinematics are and inverse kinematics. So forward kinematics, it's kind of a common sense way of animating. The foot joint or the ankle joint is attached to the knee, so that way when the knee moves, the ankle moves. Knee is attached to the hip, and when the hip moves, both of those move below that. That's how a lot of animation is. So I'm going to very quickly animate this leg doing a sweet kick. Like that. I'll turn on auto key. These are keyframed on this frame. I'll move forward in time, and then I'm just going to rotate these so out like that. Maybe he's got these wacky knees where he can just kick himself in the head. Sure, like that. And there, you're an animator right there. Again, first day in Cinema 4D, you can do that. That is the topic of the whole presentation until Gavin gets here and messes everything up. But this isn't suitable for animating everything. Now we're going to talk about FK constraints done. Yes. Now we're going to talk about IK, and maybe it's best if we take a look at this animation here. So you'll notice that in this animation, the hips are moving back and forth, and what we had just discussed with FK is you'd expect the hip to move, then the knee, and then the ankle. But this is actually the opposite, right? Because the lowest joint on the chain is being held completely still. And that's called inverse kinematics, where the position of the joint at the end of the chain is going to determine how everything above it moves. So let's set that up. It's pretty easy. I already opened that. The way you do it is you would select, in no particular order, the joint that you want to control the motion, in this case the ankle, and then select the last one you want to be inversely controlled, and go over to here, character, create IK chain. create IK chain, and it gives you this goal object. It also adds some tags in the scene, which we don't even have to talk about because everything just works. And now you'll notice here, I'm going to try to just move the ankle first, and you'll notice that this knee joint is facing to always try to rotate where that is, right? And then when this pushes up, this is going to go straight through the knee. Then the hip joint has to compensate. So inverse, it's shifting all of the joints up the chain to try to find where this foot is going. I think before my presentation, I might have, I don't remember, I don't think I added the IK on the other one. No, okay, so there's a difference there. Let's just add that. Character, create IK chain. And now you're almost already there at that idle animation where he was doing this little back and forth, right? Pretty easy. The last thing is that these feet, we want these locked directly towards the ground. And the reason they're moving, there's actually, we don't have to get too far into it, but there's a logical reason why you would want them to be staying in line with the joint chain until otherwise specified. That can be convenient for some other stuff. But in this case, we want a control on the ground. So we're going to grab the ankle and then control-click the ankle joint and go to Character, Constraints, Add Transform Constraint. There's this offset thing here, and you can say to maintain the original position before you created the constraint. So now that's like that. Let's do it on the other one before we take a look. Character, Constraints, Add Transform Constraint, maintain original with the offset. All right. And there we are. You can almost get the idle animation out of just that. So, I think we're going to animate something, but before that, let's just take a look at some of these animations. So there's the idle. My camera clipping distance is set way too close, but that's okay. We have, whoops. The jump animation. Yeah, I know, it looks pretty ridiculous. This whole project was ridiculous. The crash landing. I'll come back to that in a moment. And I think the only other one I have in here is the win. So, and this, I believe this is the rig file. So one of the mistakes that you can make, a really, really bad mistake as an animator when you're animating characters, is you do all this work finishing this rig, and then you start animating in the file. And maybe you duplicate it, and then you start animating the idle in one and the jump in the other. And then you decide, I don't want it to be blue, I want it to be red. So you would go through and change the color of the material, but then the problem is you have to go into the other scene and change that in there too. And it's going to very quickly become unmanageable with just like 5 or 6 animations, never mind hundreds like in a game pipeline. So there's a tool called an XREF in Cinema 4D, which I use for absolutely everything. To create it, you go to Create XREF, and that is going to make a scene reference. Where am I? Vranos, the rig. And now this is brought into your scene as another object. Let's just pull this up. So this is an object that could be turned on and off. And there are some limitations to the XREF. So if I go in here and try to delete something, it can't be done. That's not the point of the XREF. The XREF is just going to let you animate the rig. So we're going to do a really sad animation right here like we did last time. Creating our keys. And maybe we'll move over in time and we're going to have this guy look down at the ground or something. I didn't put on auto key again. And then we'll have him hang out there for a second. And then we'll have him come back and look the other way. All right, beautiful animation, right? Terrible animation. Doesn't matter, not the point. But you would save this scene as a separate animation file as I did with all the others. So now, let's say we have the situation where we want to change the color. So I'm going back into the rig file, and I'm just going to make some color changes in here. All right, a couple more. There. And then I'm going to save it. Yeah, that's fine. We'll take the risk, guys. And we go back into the idle. And how do we load this in here? Basically just unload the XREF, reload. This is not linked to the same one, is it? Because I had it on my flash drive. All right, that's okay. We're going to do this with... Where is that file? Mistakes happen, guys. That's all right. It's only me who looks foolish. I hope you're all still having a good time. There. Okay, perfect. So you can do that in every one of your scenes, or it'll automatically be reloaded the next time you open your project file. Really flexible. And the same thing goes with changing the geometry. So I'm in this rig file. For example, if I wanted to change the shape of the ball on his antenna, I'm going to grab this cube here, whatever, and let's find that antenna wherever it may be. Scroll down. Zero it out. And we're going to save it and go back into one of these files here. And there it is. So XREFs are extremely powerful and can save you from so much pain as an animator. Now, where were we in here? Let's take a look at just one or two other fun things I was able to do in the rig. Not super important here. Was this the squash one? So another cool thing about animating in Cinema 4D is that if you put your deformers directly in the same group as the geometry, I have this squash right here, it can apply to all of these. This wasn't joint rigged. So I'll grab this. You can look into the parameters here and play with the factor. Really cool. Just wanted to show that. And that's probably it. Maybe some of the other stuff that I used in the animations that are harder to see is I added a little bit for the face to get squashed when he's getting exploded, and some little things like an intermediate joint for the hip so it can slide up and down. And one of my personal favorites, which we won't get into today, but cinema is great for, is stretchy IKs. So that way when it goes past its length, it stretches, and then I ran an expression to shrink that. So I found that was pretty fun to make this character a little bit rubbery. So the next step after I had the character all animated and figured out was actually getting it into the game engine, and I made this prototype, which looks absolutely terrible. But it was a good first step. I went to a concept artist and illustrator, and this is what they came up with. We decided we wanted to do it hand-painted. And as soon as we started dragging the objects into Unity, I realized how bad I was at shading in Unity. So we decided to take a completely different approach and just render everything out to sprites. Ah, no! I missed it. Go away, Premiere. Fit. So here... Sometimes you need to do it live, guys. You mess everything up. So here are the animations. And right away you can see this was nice about doing it in After Effects. I added this fake lighting after the fact and added the fire. Didn't add anything to that. Some cool explosion effects that might have been hard to do in Unity. Maybe not for some people, but definitely hard for me. And it kind of put me back in my comfort zone working in After Effects. This isn't super relevant, but just so you know... I think here it is. Sprite sheets are typically what you bring into a game engine for whatever reason. So that's what we output. It's very handy doing that in After Effects because you can use expressions to lay out the position and make that flexible. So what was next? I think it's good to take a look at some of the staging pieces. So I rendered these all in Octane at the time, but we're going to look at Redshift today because it's bundled with Cinema 4D. And some of these objects were a little bit heavy, and that's kind of why we put them all to flat cards to make sure it was easy to bring this to a cell phone. So these are all the objects in the game, pretty lightweight. Now, as we started to get the look together, rendering this with the soft lighting, I thought it looked pretty good, but the issue was there was no directionality to the lighting, and I didn't like that one bit. Now, in some games, if you have a character that's always upright and the staging pieces that are upright, you could just put a top light on here. But as you might remember from my game, wherever the heck this is, everything is always spinning around, and it's just totally not going to be realistic to put a top light in there. It had to be more flexible than that. So, to reiterate the lighting problem, On the left, you have a flat card, which is very lightweight and good for a game engine, but doesn't respond to lights. On the right, you have a 3D object, which looks great, but might be too heavy. So what do? How do we get somewhere between the two of those? I have a level where I can show what the solution was, or kind of hint at it. If you take a look here, when he's facing towards the lava, there's orange lighting and the sky is blue. So we actually did manage to solve it. And also, I just kind of can't resist because this level is fun. All right, I'd sit there and play with that for a while, but I don't want to get yelled at. This is rendered in Cinema 4D. On the left is the actual object, and on the right is a card. So I'm going to show you what that technique is now. Render to render view here. All right, there we are. So you can see it's a flat card, but you can also see that as the lights are moving around it, we actually are getting that lighting in there, which is really, really handy. So this is using a normal map, and I don't know who's heard of it, who hasn't, but it's a great technique for bringing in complex objects, especially if they're off in the background, and making them look good because they respond to the lighting. The way that a normal map is set up is basically it fires a ray from camera, and it creates a shader in red, green, and blue that loosely represents the angle of the surface. So looking at this, we fire a ray, and because it's this point of the surface is facing to the left, it's going to be black. This part of the surface is facing to the right, it's going to be red. And then up is going to be green, down is going to be black on the green channel, and blue is just general facing angle. It's not like depth, it's just general facing. But when you put the three of those together, that is the shading effect you can get right here. So to show you how easy this is to do, again, the idea is... No, let's skip back. To actually do this, to do the soft diffuse lighting, you basically go to Edit Render Settings and turn on Redshift. And then don't touch anything, it's already perfect. And go to Create, Light, Dome Light. And then press Render. And there you go. I mean, that's game ready right there for what we were doing. It's that easy. And then to add the normal pass, it's just as easy. Pull up the Redshift AOV Manager, pull in the normals, restart the render, and there's a normal pass. Redshift is one of the easiest renders I've ever used in my life. You may notice that this doesn't look like the other normal pass. Redshift does it a little bit different than Octane. Octane was showing the values between 0 and 1. Redshift does negative values to the left, positive values to the right. But if you put on a filter, you can see all that information is there. So I'm just going to increase the brightness here. And you can see it almost looks like the Octane render right now. Probably the gamma is a little bit off, but you get the idea. You can get the same thing out, bring it into After Effects, normalize it, pair it with your color shader in Unity, the game engine, or in Cinema 4D, whatever, and you have that normal map lighting on a flat card. And then I think I just want to show some of the effect under a little bit more of a microscope. You can see we're getting that top lighting. These spherical objects really feel spherical. Great, simple technique. And then we have another lighting build-up just showing each of the lights turning on one by one. Very easy to do. So this is probably the thing that's the least related to Cinema 4D, but I still think it's fun because I made this game. We have our zones, zone 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And for efficiency, what happens is you only load one zone at a time because you don't know how terrible someone's phone is. You also don't want like the sound effects from the other scenes to be playing nearby. So as the character moves, quickly loads this first one, waits a second, quickly unloads the one behind it. And then this is what the player is seeing. I don't know if we have the time, so I'm not going to show the whole level, but like I said, I encourage you to go play the game. It's on my website. Not available on the Play Store anymore. And one last thing to say that I really love about generator objects. So when I wanted to 3D print this guy, that antenna was just too thin and flimsy, wasn't working out. So because it's a generator object, not baked to polys, I can just grab that circle under the sweep, increase the size, increase this as well. And then probably the highest poly count you're ever going to want in the world is for 3D printing. So again, all generator objects, bringing these up so they're very, very smooth. So let's pause that. So this was the, like I said, this mouse is a little sticky and it's driving me nuts. This is what the game model looks like when it doesn't have a Fong tag, because real life doesn't have Fong tags when you're 3D printing. And, you know, by keeping everything as generator objects through the whole pipeline, it was easy to replace that and actually get something smooth for a 3D print. This is the slicer, which is Cura, and it's building the scaffolding, which is going to be important in a moment. Printing it in layers from bottom to top. And here's a time lapse of the 3D print. All right. Now, one lucky guest is going to go home with this 3D print. Who wants it firsthand? Boom. All yours. You guys were too slow. So now I think we're gonna pivot into another project that ties back to this. Gavin Shapiro presents. Gavin, everyone look at Gavin. Make him feel uncomfortable. He doesn't like attention. So I'm gonna pull Gavin up here in a bit. Okay. So this was the project. This was 3D printed. It's a zoetrope. That sound is terrible. And the way a zoetrope works is, I assume everyone has some sort of animation background here, so we don't have to overdo it. Basically, we have 15 frames of animation on this circle, and we're trying to spin this thing very fast in such a way that it's in sync with the camera's shutter. So if we're shooting at 24 frames a second, on the first frame, this is frame 1, and we want it to spin so fast that at the time the next frame comes around, the other one is in its place. So we have this here right now. Now, I'm guessing there's no zoetrope effect because the shutter is wide open. It would have been cool if we could do that. So we did grab a video of that yesterday. Maybe it was this one? Yeah. So use your imagination. Pretend I did that live. Yeah. Whatever, not everything can work out. Okay, so in terms of making this is where generator objects are just super helpful. This was it. Gavin built this, and I want you all to hound him with questions later. Oh, no. I think I have too much stuff open, guys. All right, we are going to close this. I think we're done with After Effects as well. When you open 50 projects and you don't close any on your way out, this is what you get. You look like a fool in front of everyone. Yeah, one of them. One of the many. No, no, no. So, could I bribe you guys to stick around by throwing more 3D prints at the audience? Who wants... There you go. All right, there's one for you. While we're rebooting, there's one for you. I'm just going to give this box. You are in charge of distribution, sir. But when I get this back up, everyone had better pay attention. Yeah, okay. Ah, much better. Okay, so this is running again. So generator objects. There's this issue when you're 3D printing is that if you're printing a 1-inch by 1-inch cube, it's actually going to be bigger than that. It's going to be whatever your nozzle size is because the nozzle is drawing directly on the border of the cube. So when Gavin built this, he built this using generator objects. So we could try prints. The first one didn't work. I think it was too tight. and then he went into the object here, and then just played around with the radius or whatever, made it bigger or smaller, until that fit. So I love Cinema 4D for 3D printing. I use it for everything because of that. Let's close this scene, because this one gets really heavy. Actually, because of the way this thing spins, we had to make all these concentric circles in the center. I don't know how well you can see that, but we had to create some really ridiculously dense geometry there because we wanted to get that nice anisotropic shading effect. And that's why this scene is so heavy, because we have about 5 million circles on the center of that. Now, where were we? The collector zoetrope. This was crazy. Gavin, be proud of this one, man. Yeah, that's nuts. Way to overshadow my presentation, bud. Okay, so how do you guys think this would work when 3D printed? Terrible. Well, we did it. This is spinning 700 RPM. If you touch this, your finger would be gone. It's spinning so fast, they look like they're slanted from the shutter wobble. This was extremely dangerous. And just to prove that this was real, I just want to show some of the in-progress stuff. We have it halfway through the print there. Pay attention to this. This will come back in just a second. The speed control, I have a friend who's an electrical engineer who works in aerospace who was kind enough to show me all the parts to buy, so that way I could use this speed controller to get it right up to 700 RPM, no faster, no slower. All right. Now, where were we? Okay. So this is something that Gavin animated with dynamics. That's why it's going to break apart a little bit unless you play it in sequence. It's very cool. But this would pose a ton of problems for 3D printing. This would be really bad because it would need supports. For those of you who aren't familiar with 3D printing, everything has to be connected to the ground because you can't print in midair. I'm just going to create a cube to try to show what I mean by this. So when the printing process starts on the ground here, let me try to get all the way down here so you can kind of see. It's going to start printing here, and here, and another layer, and here, and here. And this is the issue that I'm talking about. See how this wing comes out of nowhere? You can't leave something suspended in midair, so everything needs to have supports. And going back to our actual printed, let's see, let's go to the collector zoetrope. There's no way with all these hundreds and hundreds of penguins we were going to be able to create supports and then get in there and then clip them out. It just would have been too clumsy. My fingers couldn't possibly be small and precise enough. So we needed to build in supports on this model that looked good enough when printed. All right, so let's get rid of this, and I'm going to show you that general technique. We used constraints, and the first thing was we added these cylinders underneath the arms, or the wings rather. So these are always touching the ground, and they definitely don't look like wings, but like whatever, it works. I think we added another pillar under his tail. Then his tail was off the ground. That is obviously a problem. All the other presentations showed how to do this, where you select the verts and then apply a modifier, so I'm not going to show it. But basically just selecting those verts and driving them into the ground. I don't think that was really a big compromise in integrity for the scene because it made everything print and work well. And then the feet, this looks pretty crazy, but the feet were obviously off the ground, so we just grabbed those and pulled down the sole, so that shoots to the bottom, getting rid of that overhang issue. And then finally, the arms were extremely thin, so as seen in the other presentations, you could grab those vertices and then just kind of increase the width there, right? Very procedural. And then finally, a bool to cut out the floor, and a subdivision surface to make it smooth for printing. So that's how we did it. And if we just go back to show you what this looks like, you can see these supports here. It all printed as one piece. We didn't have to go in and clip anything. And it worked out pretty well. So where is it? I'll show it one more time. There. Cool, right? So then, I don't know what this is. I'm going to ignore that. Oh, so what it was like for how we shot this. We set it up on my kitchen table, and we put it on the big screen TV because you don't really know how fast it's supposed to be spinning, right? So it's helpful to have that visual reference. Some people ask what it's like to work with a legend like Gavin Shapiro. And it's basically just me sitting around doing nothing while he does all the work. So thank you for that, Gavin. And that's why I'm going to invite him up for questions on how he actually built it in Cinema 4D, because I really just did the 3D printing. And what is this one? Oh, no, I already showed that. Get that out of here. All right, so that's it for that project. We're moving. Actually, we're doing good on time, only 140. And now let's take a look here. So this is what I'm actually known for, is motion tracking software. So tracking warping surfaces. Pay attention here, because this is what we're going to look at, is bringing it into Cinema 4D so you can attach objects to warping surfaces in Cinema 4D. So that scene is particularly important. And this scene right here. I'll just let this go. That's always fun, taking the motion from a real shot and then just applying some animation to it. And that's my shameless plug for the day. But let's look at how this was set up. So you would track it in After Effects. And now we have Lockdown 3D coming out. We're actually announcing it here at the show, and there's this new tab, 3D. And in it, it's going to apply the depth automatically. And you can export this through Alembic into Cinema 4D. All right, so let's get that out of here. And wait, that is not the right video at all. All right, I'm going to skim along here. Yeah, so same thing. Okay, so tracked in After Effects, and now there's the new 3D tab. So it attempts to bring your objects out into 3D, but you can actually adjust the depth map if you need to, and then export to Alembic. Here it is in Cinema 4D. And just to show some of the techniques you can use to attach objects. So now we're out of After Effects and back in our comfort zone, which is Cinema 4D. I'm going to make a cloner. I'm going to put a cone inside of there. And on the cloner, I'm going to set it to object mode and take that geometry from After Effects and put it in there. Go to the distribution, set it to polygon center, and now all those objects are attached. And you can just play through it, and that's there. So trying to make tracking in 3D relatively easy and painless. There's also, if you just want to do one object, you can create it, and then select the mesh and select the object. Go to Character Constraints, add Surface Constraint. Set the distance down so it's completely attached there. At this point, saying what I'm doing is probably not as helpful. You probably want to go slow and choose these options and understand what they do. But pretty easy just to attach an object to that surface. So that's coming out. Keep an eye on that. And do I have anything else in here? Actually, no. That went way faster than expected. So thank you. And Gavin, come on up. I rushed that one a little bit. Okay. Yeah. What's this video? I'm just gonna let this play. So I don't want Gavin to just get free beers tonight without doing any work. Do we have any questions for Gavin first?
Yeah. Yeah, that was totally animated. That was all C4D. Yeah, it's a render.
One second. I'm going to grab these.
Sure. So this kind of zoetrope technique was pioneered by a guy named John Edmark. And the way he does it, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's basically like the way that sunflower seeds grow, where there's a certain angle that you can place something. And in sunflower seeds and plants and stuff, it works like this for optimal like light absorption and getting light from the sun. But if you So basically, they go out in this even pattern that stacks them all in a very clean way. And then if you rotate the object that amount every frame, you see that one object sort of move out towards the or away from the center. So you can put an animation in that, and then as it spins at this speed, you'll see the animation play as it sort of goes out towards the center. I'll show you a video later on that's really fascinating and sort of explains the whole methodology behind it. But I sort of studied his work and just tried to understand what he was doing. And it's really fascinating. You can make incredible zoetropes using that technique. Yeah.
All right. Do we have any other questions for Gavin? He really got off that easy?
All right, there we go.
No, don't go anywhere. As a side note, guys, we're going to have arts and crafts with sharp objects immediately following, because when you 3D print, you have to take off all this scaffolding. So basically, you grab the thing, and you go like that. Who wants it? Ah! All right. So if you want to join me for arts and crafts afterward in the corner, I brought these guys, and we can clip those. So now, does anyone have questions for me? Yes. Does anyone else have questions for me? No. I've learned not to make promises. I'd say that it's going pretty well. We would love to be able to do it by the end of November. I just can't make any promises because we don't want to release anything that's not like up to that standard of quality. I'm already using it for production. I'm using it for real shots on my own, but we have to test it on all the different operating systems and graphics cards because we went from a 2D render to all this. I think it's OpenGL or whatever. I'm a fraud, guys. I don't program my own stuff. But a lot of testing has to happen. So maybe December, maybe not. Yeah, we'll see. What else we got? It's very easy. So when you export out of Cinema 4D, I wish I had installed Cura on here, and I wish I had just brought my printer. Actually, which one of these can I open that won't be too crazy? Yeah, okay, come on. One of the quirks is that you have to make sure that only what you want in the scene is going to be there to export. So you'd probably grab it and copy and paste it into a new scene, and then go to File, Export, come on, this mouse, STL, and then you have your real-world scale settings if you were smart enough to do that. STLs are based around real-world units. And then press OK, and whatever, save that to the presentation folder. And now this is just an asset very, very similar to an OBJ. And I can drag this back in here. As you can see, there's no Fong because Fongs are going to do some deceptive smoothing. That's very problematic in 3D printing because they don't exist in the real world. So this is how you would probably view it to decide if it's smooth enough or not. I got something for you. All right, I'm going to go to my Instagram and hope it loads. I have like one of those cheap like $30 a month phone plans. It seems like a great idea when you get it. And then you have no reception anywhere in the city, the biggest city in the world. My Instagram is Chris Vranos, by the way, if anyone wants to. Can you see this camera? Okay, you got that? All right, this is just for you. So you see how that's animating, right? And the way it's set up is this is how it was built in Cinema 4D. You can see that. And I just printed these out as 30 different frames on my desk. Whatever, you'll have to take my word for it. Okay, great. Okay, awesome. So let me show one more time. So this was the sequence, and this is just stop motion.
Still hanging out? You still going to harass them or what?
Here's a scene in Cinema 4D. And this is the mess I made of my desk. So you just pop them on, take a picture, and move on to the next one. Chris Vranos.
Can you pull it up on screen?
Oh, we have internet connection, guys.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, wow, high tech. All the last NABs I went to, we couldn't get it for whatever reason. That's why New York is better. Do you care which profile, whatever? Just, oh, come on, dude, this mouse is a mess.
Hit a button. See what happens.
Oh, I can't. The mouse is so unruly right now. Try it. It's not working. Oh, jeez, I like never use these. Ah, much better. Person 1. / Chris Vranos. All right, keep going, keep going. There's some cool stuff in here.
There he is.
There's the speed controller. But don't mind the violence, guys. I like fighting. That's how I met Gavin. Oh, come on.
Can't click on anything, but there you go.
Yeah. Let's see.
Do
Chris.
you have your website? You can. Is all your stuff on your website too?
It's not super updated. Ah.
Well, there you go, folks.
Yeah, forget it.
There.
Just go to my Instagram, whatever.
Go to your gram. You'll be able to get to it. We can't do it here. Do we have any more questions for Chris? Or Gavin, just because Gavin's
Please,
here.
make Gavin do some work.
Gavin, do work. Michael, what do you got?
Yes, I have a 3D printer, and
Can you repeat the question for the audience?
So why did we print it at the size that we did? Basically, I bought the biggest 3D printer I could get that wasn't ridiculously expensive. It's 11 inches by 11 inches by 15 inches, and this was as big as the bed could take it. So that was it.
There's your decision. There it is. Someone asked online, I use Mocha for this in combination with Silhouette. What do you use?
Wait, for what?
I guess it's for some type of tracking. I
use Lockdown because I made that software.
He uses Lockdown.
Yeah,
he made it. Why not? Like, why else? So there you go.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say to that one.
There it is. Last questions from our live audience. All right. Well, great job, everyone. That is a wrap. This is our last presentation. Give everybody a round of applause. Give Chris another round of applause. Last presentation here in New York. Our next show is going to be November 9th, so check us out at the 3D Motion Show. I think you still have some giveaways, so everybody in the audience,
come get some toys, guys.
Yeah, come get your toys all wired together for you.
Yeah.
So November 9th is going to be our next show on the 3D Motion Show. Also, check out Z Summit. So you can go to maxon.net/events, and you'll see all of our upcoming events. The ZBrush Summit is coming up right after the 3D Motion, so check that out. And we also have a couple more shows for the end of the year. So we'll see you then. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Ciao, everyone.